This video is sponsored by Zhiyun. If you guys haven't noticed already, there is a new Zhiyun gimbal that comes out nearly every single year. Last year in May of 2023, they had the Weebill 3S come out, and it's a great gimbal. And this one, it is basically a stripped down Weebill 3S for 1/3 of the price, which has me quite interested. So in this video, we're checking this gimbal out. Now, because this is a budget gimbal, it's not going to come with nearly as many accessories. It comes in this styrofoam style case, and inside you have some manuals, a base plate, USB-C cables, as well as an Allen key and a locking bolt, a mini tripod, and the gimbal itself. If you are thinking you need more accessories, the good news is that it is compatible with the Weebill 3S accessories, such as the wrist rest and the extension handle. At the bottom, you have 3 tripod mounts. The handle and grip is nice and rubberized. It feels just as good as the Weebill 3S. There is a USB-C port here for charging, a trigger scroll wheel, a trigger button, and the same screen and menu and user interface with physical button layout that we've seen over the last 3 or so years with Zhiyun gimbals. Each axis has a lock on it. The motors are all well covered. There is some Cinepeer branding here that I will talk about in a moment, and the light has been deleted, which is interesting. There is a USB-C port here to connect to your camera, and then the base plate goes up here. The one notable thing about this base plate is that with the Weebill 3E, there is what they are calling a native portrait switch, which means if you want to swap over to vertical shooting, it should take you nearly no time at all. You slide off this bracket and you put it back on vertically, and I can't say other gimbals make it this easy, even other Zhiyun gimbals. Now let's talk about Cinepeer, because this is what Honda is to Acura, kind of an offshoot brand that offers the same performance of the Zhiyun gimbals at a more affordable price with cheaper materials and cheaper building processes. And when I say cheaper materials, I guess the correct term would be budget conscious materials, because this gimbal does not feel cheap by any stretch. It doesn't feel as fully featured with everything added onto it, but it still feels like a substantial piece of equipment. It doesn't feel like a cheap toy. And I think this is a win because Cinepeer is easier to pronounce correctly, and so far this gimbal is offering the same internal motor strength as a gimbal that's nearly 3 times the price. This 3E is rated for 3 kilograms, which is roughly 6.5 pounds, and that should be enough for about 98% of people running around with cameras. Now, setting up this gimbal is simple and straightforward. If you've done it a handful of times on any gimbal, it should take you no longer than 2 or 3 minutes. Once it's all done, this is what it looks like. And for samples, I'm using some new lenses from Sirui that I'll be reviewing tomorrow. With my FX30 and this 75mm, total weight is 2.5 pounds, so I shouldn't be pushing the motors too hard. With gimbals, it all comes down to stabilization. I mean, that's what you're buying these things for. And with Zhiyun, they've been in this game for almost 10 years, making algorithms, making the hardware, and they are pretty good at it, I would say. So let's see what this budget offshoot version of this gimbal can do with my FX30. Let's take a look at some sample videos. Ready, set, go. All of those samples were shot at 16mm f1.2 wide open with the FX30, and I turned off all IBIS, in-body image stabilization, or any internal stabilization on the camera body itself. So the only thing that was stabilizing those video clips was in fact this gimbal, just to make it a fair sample of what it's capable of. And in a quick summary, it does a really good job. It's not quite as smooth as a larger gimbal like the Crane 3 Lab or the Feiyu Scorp Pro, but it is smoother than the smaller gimbals like the Crane M3. I've found that when it comes to gimbals, the size is about proportional to the performance, no matter how big and heavy your camera setup is. This gimbal's menu system is simple and easy to navigate. I didn't have to sign into any apps to fine-tune this gimbal the way that I like to, which is great. The battery life appears to be very good. It's rated for more than 16 hours, which your arm will fail before this gimbal will. And there's not much else to discuss about this thing. It's a very solid gimbal, especially for the money. Now, if you're looking for a gimbal that has lights and AI tracking and subject recognition and all these other fancy handles and extensions and all that fun stuff, this is definitely not the gimbal for you. But if you do want to buy some of those accessories that come on, the Weebill 3S, as I mentioned, you can outfit this gimbal with those accessories. And what you're getting here is still a gimbal that has the same payload, has the same torquey motors. It's quiet. It provides smooth footage, I think, for the size. And I prefer this over some more complicated gimbals that you have to set up and plug in a whole bunch of stuff. I like to keep my setups nice and simple. I like to be able to slide my camera on and take it off quickly. I do wish that this gimbal had a quick release mechanism such as what we saw on the Crane M3, but I won't argue that this one is definitely smoother. The footage is smoother coming out of it than the Crane M3. Beyond the quick release, the only other negative that I have about this gimbal is that underslung mode is kind of a challenge. Now, most gimbals that are made like this have about a 45-degree arm. And so the idea is if you want to shoot super low, you just go like this and you're fine. And so this works, but if you have a lens that's a little bit too long, or in my case, I had a lens with a lens hood, it will knock, and then this is no longer quite as stable. So underslung mode is not as easy as some other gimbals. However, you can still shoot completely upside down by just flipping this whole thing like this and balancing. And I think that's kind of the way to do it. That way it gives you the flexibility to move forward or back, and it still is stabilizing upside down. And you saw that I didn't have to do anything other than flip this whole thing over just like that, and it kind of keeps its position. And even though it's not balanced in that underslung position, the motors are so torquey and so powerful that this 2.5-pound payload is nothing. It requires no additional anything from me, which is nice. Beyond those two things, I really had no issues. No random shaking or failing due to load or improper balancing, and the footage is pretty smooth for me not trying. I wasn't trying to ninja walk, I was simply walking normally in these shots, and even when I'm running, it's smooth. When it comes to price, this thing is a remarkable $250 US, which is a really good deal already. However, Zhiyun is offering a coupon code down in the description. They have a sale going on right now as well. And with that combination, you can pick up this gimbal for right around $200 USD, which I think is an absolute steal. I can't think of another gimbal out on the market for $200 that's coming from a reputable company that's been in business for 9+ years making gimbals, that offers a 6.5-pound payload and has that kind of smooth performance. It still has built-in Bluetooth as well. I mean, this is a stripped down Weebill 3S, but it's stripped down, it just has all of the good elements. It's like buying a 911 GT3 RS. It's still a 911. It's just stripped down and better, but that one's more expensive and this one's less expensive. Anyway, you guys get the idea. And I think this is a good move by Zhiyun because it allows them to extend and expand their kind of more higher end product lines by adding new features to the more expensive options out there. But it allows them also to still kind of satisfy that need for those who are just starting out shooting video. They want something that's budget friendly. They want something that just simply works, that's not overly complicated to use. And I think for that, it's very good. I think this is The vertical mode on its own is enough for me to recommend this over something like the Crane M3. And it's also more stable than the Crane M3 as well, and it's cheaper than the Crane M3. So ultimately I see this as an impressive gimbal that should be quite popular out on the market. It might take a little bit of time for that Cinepeer name to kind of be more recognized and more mainstream, but I think it's going to do quite well. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for all of your likes, all of your comments, and your support. Stay tuned for more, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.